Hey, what's up guys? So today I wanted to have a discussion video with you guys as well as give you guys some feedback because someone asked me, yo, why doesn't my anti-meta deck beat meta? And this is kind of a rock, paper, and scissors kind of argument. So in Yu-Gi-Oh, water does not beat fire, fire does not beat grass. There's not the circular like this deck beats this deck. It all comes really down to, of course, the decks as well as the players. Now, this duel is an excellent example of this in action. So, anyways, this guy's playing an anti-meta barrier statue deck, and I know Phantom Knights, they're not the most meta thing, but at one point, this deck was meta, and it's going to showcase an excellent example of why anti-meta does not always beat meta. Now, anti-meta can definitely beat meta, but it lacks some things, like, you know, players that are coming maybe from Duel Links or maybe Hearthstone, maybe some other Pokemon, some other card games. I understand some card games, like this deck, has a huge advantage over another deck. But the thing is anti-meta does not always just give you like a 90% win rate against meta. That's just not how it works, because anti-meta at its core is supposed to stop your opponent from doing anything. Now, right now we see a Fossil Dyna, we've got the Moon Mirror Shield. This is kind of a lock. This is, I would consider like a soft lock. It's kind of difficult to get over this because Phantom Knights, they need a special summon to really do anything. We see the Barrier Statue, although the Dark one, maybe not the best against a Phantom Knight deck. We see Dark Bribe, another anti-meta card. Now, a lot of anti-meta cards, they rely off of other cards. You gotta have this, plus you gotta have this, and once one of those things breaks, because you can see Dark Duelist has only got 300 life points, the other guy, he's sitting at the healthy 8,000, but that's about to change. We see Fog Blade activated, and it's gonna go ahead and make it so that monster cannot attack and negate its effects. So now, Fossil Dyna, which is the card that was stopping the Fire Fluff guy from, Fire Fluff is the guy you pulled off the anti-meta stuff. So he has this card to stop his opponent from doing anything. But once that thing got stopped, he's going to be utilizing the graveyard. He's going to activate Break Sword. He's going to go ahead and get rid of Dark Sanctuary. That was a pretty cheeky thing to have out on board. But nonetheless, he had to get rid of that. Because if someone to finally be able to attack him to deal damage, it would become a coin flip RNG fest. But nonetheless, the anti-meta player is pretty much at a huge disadvantage right now because he's got the Ghost Ogre and Reaper. Let's see what cards he was going to stop. He's going to start Synchros. No Totally Awesome to stop. I thought that would have been an excellent card for the Reaper to hit and stuff like that. Maybe ABC Dragon, maybe some other more meta-ish cards. But again, it didn't really matter. I don't think people would start side decking against the Phantom Knights because that's one other problem that anti-meta has. And you guys can see, he just has that one Raigeki. Without that Raigeki though, he probably would have lost, let's be honest here. But anti-meta, they lose out a lot to Dark Hole, Raigeki, Twin Twisters, things that a lot of decks just happen to be playing. Now I know some people side deck Twin Twisters, Galaxy Cyclone, but for the most part, again, they rely off of having their board being established. And also, once your opponent has stuff on the board, it's kind of difficult for anti-meta to really be able to top deck like one card to deal with something that's already out on board. I know Fossil Dyna, you could technically set it, it flips face up, destroys all the special monsters, but flip flex, they're pretty slow, and at the end of the day, you're still out of board yourself, more than likely, because that's just kind of how anti-meta goes. But he's able to utilize cards from the graveyard and get some free extra advantage. He's going to go ahead and rank up into Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. And the Ghost Reaper, it just doesn't have the amount of targets, or the targets that he needed. But the core concept of the video was, again, that anti-meta does not always beat meta. And that's just because there's tons of reasons. I kind of want to go into that. Now that we've kind of seen it in action, like the guy had a setup, but once that setup was broken, like that Fossil Dyna had its effects negated, he was able to go off and completely destroy him. He was able to utilize a lot of the cards out of the graveyard. Where anti-meta, they don't really have that. Most of their cards are there face up, like value, like on board immediately. You got no like banish this card to really do this or do this. That's just kind of how the deck goes. There's not like a one card, search this card, then you can banish from your graveyard later to protect the cards. That's what anti-meta lacks at its core. Oh dang, I guess I didn't hit save. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about was some anti-meta cards, just in general, and also, for example, some of the reasons why anti-meta does not always beat meta. And again, I understand that anti-meta can beat meta. It's not like you're just going to always lose. That wasn't the point of this video. The point of this video was, you know, water does not beat fire, fire does not beat grass, grass does not beat water. That's, I know, okay, hold on. There are certain cards that say, like, do bonus damage against, like, earth-type monsters or something like that. There are cards that do exist like that, but that's, like, realistically, that's not a valid point in the game. But for the most part, the idea was that there's not a counter to the meta. There's not like, oh, this anti-meta deck, everything that's like that's winning, all of these decks would just lose as an anti-meta deck. I don't think there's really a deck right now that beats everything 100% of the time. There's not really one of those decks, with the exception of Trickstars. The reason why is because they're the only deck right now that can FTK your opponent, and I say it with, you know, these quotation marks because technically your opponent does have like one turn, but it's at like the start of their standby phase. It's pretty much an FTK, let's be honest here. You're going to be just getting rid of all of your opponent's stuff. I actually did 2 videos. If you guys want to check that out, I'll link it down below because it's winning in the OCG, and it's one of the most annoying decks to face off against because it doesn't even give your opponent a chance. But with the exception of that deck, everything in the meta, whether it is the True Dracos, I know Zodiacs, they're probably going to be gone next ban list, but you know, there are a lot of different decks, like Zodiacs, for example, Barrage, if I can spell. Alright, Zodiac Barrage, okay. You top deck this, you can do stuff, right? But with an anti-meta player, what are you going to top deck? Moon, what is it? Mirror, Shield? Like, if you top deck Moon Mirror Shield, you still need a monster. And then on top of that, monster has to be pretty good because I know Breaker's not like a good example, but there are, okay, any rank 4, okay, let's say like Zodiacs, Balloon Boxers, alright? You have like, let's say you have like this card plus you have like a monster, alright? You equip to the monster, they go, they get 1 card, Altair, Deneb, whatever, it doesn't matter really the archetype, there's tons of things that can go into rank 4s. They just go ahead and go Castell, I'll bounce back your monster, you lose Moon and Mirror Shield, and you lose the monster. There's a lot of things in anti-meta that require like a big setup, like for example, Necro Valley. I guess there's a lot of cards with Necro Valley. Okay, so let's say you have like Necro Valley and you have like another card. Okay, I know it's banned, but let's just say like, okay, I guess we can see. I think Domain's another, that's a field spell. Okay, another card that just prevents from special summoning. There's probably tons. But let's say you have something else that prevents your opponent, like another spell card that's like preventing your opponent from doing anything, right? Your opponent activates 1 Twin Twister. You've lost both of your things, and then on top of that, I don't know, Doomcal's like, no one really plays this card. This at one point was one of like the most praised anti-meta cards. This card was expensive. It was actually like, even when it had its first reprint, it was like a $50 card. But anyways, Doomcaliber Knight was one of like the most, whoa, wow, that card is so good. But one problem I think anti-meta has is that it has the problem of you just being a very, very slow-paced player. Like, you can't really speed up and be like, I'm gonna summon double Doomcaliber Knights. Like, you're paced to play slow, so your opponent has a few more turns to kind of draw out their stuff and get rid of that, like, that one key card that you have that's preventing them from being played, whether it's Necro Valley, a Moon Mirror Shield, a False Dino, whatever it is. If they get rid of that one card, they're going to go off in one turn and completely shut you down and make this board that's just, it's too hard for the deck to really come back with. And I know that there are certain decks, for example, like the True Draco, the True Dracos, like Masterpiece. I know it's been hit in the OCG, but like, for example, let's say one player invests all of their cards, because even though this deck is what's considered meta, the core concept of anti-meta is investing all of your stuff out on board. Like, let's say, for example, you go for Masterpiece, alright? You kind of just go off really fast, you make this card, and this is like your one card, right? And sometimes this card can just beat your opponent. I mean, it can be unaffected by spells, traps, and monster effects. And if you happen to have the field spell, it also prevents them from being destroyed. It's like once per turn when it would be destroyed, like, it's not destroyed. Draconic Diagram, that's the card. Okay, so anyways, let's say like they have both of these on board. You just go, okay, Kaiju Tribute. Okay, they've heavily invested into perhaps this one card, right? You get rid of that one card and you can lose. So even though this is considered a meta deck, it still has the concept of an anti-meta-ish, like, I guess, playstyle. I know that there's a bunch of different decks that are like, oh, yeah, I'm immune to spells, traps, and monster effects, but that is at its core concept. Again, I know I'm mentioning the word 50 times. Someone's gonna be like, I can't believe he said core concept 5,000 times in one video. But the reason why is because I'm trying to repeat myself, just like how teachers repeat themselves, you know, in school. I'm trying to teach to you guys that the idea of anti-meta, and you guys can feel free to comment on this, is that you have this one setup and you have to have that setup, like whether it's a macro cosmos, all right? Let's say you got like a macro cosmos and you got like a fossil dyna, right? Fossil dyna. And the problem is that once one thing is gone, like for example, I know this is not the most meta of cards, all right? Breaker. Actually no. Well, okay. This card is more meta, and it's like basically the same thing. Okay, so let's say there's a fossil dyna and a macrocosmos. One person summons Lila. They're able to now get over Fossil Dyna, and then main phase 2, they can activate Lila's effect to destroy Macrocosmos. Macrocosmos is now gone. They've used one card for your 2. You don't get very good trade values out of anti-meta cards. Generally, that's just kind of like the core concept. Again, there's a bunch of cards. There's, what is it? A Cyber, is it Cyber Angel? Is it Cyber Angel Ritual? Oh gosh, okay. Okay, Machine Angel Ritual, okay. There's one that like banishes it, okay. Oh, here we go. So this one lets you ritual summon, and then if a light monster you control be destroyed by battle or by card effect, while it's in your graveyard, you can't banish instead. You get more value out of what's considered meta. I know Cyber Angels aren't this isn't really meta, but again, the whole idea is that like you have like the graveyard with Phantom Knights, you have the graveyard. Usually it's the graveyard or any of the searcher cards sometimes have like bonus effects, like Tenki for example. Tenki gives you that extra boost and it searches out a card, plus it's a card on board. So for example, if you go Tenki into the Fire Fist Bear, oh gosh, oh there's not that many bears. Okay, so you go like, you know, you'd have Tenki into Bear, then you can pop this. You get more value for your cards. And again, the whole video wasn't supposed to be like just talking trash about anti-meta saying the deck is bad, but it's that you don't get that many value out of your cards. Usually what you're trying to do, what you got out on board is what you got. When it goes away, it goes away. Whereas again, these other decks, this card searches this card can pop this card, and then on top of that, when it inflicts battle damage, you get another one. Like you get all these combo plays, and anti-meta kind of lacks that. That's again at its core concept. The only really anti-meta deck that has kind of seen some play was like barrier statues. But the problem with these barrier statues, okay, let's say you got like a barrier statue of water. Oh, they're playing Mermails. Okay, that card's completely irrelevant. Against the Phantom Knights, you guys saw that the Abyss was summoned, but the problem was, I think Dark and Light are the most relevant ones. So if you're playing, also it depends on the meta. Keep that in mind as well. Like when Mermails are super meta, don't be playing this card. Maybe you can swap in some of these. But there's so many different decks that are fire, water. Like you can mix it up if you want to, but you don't know what you're facing up against, and that is one problem that anti-meta faces. Like for example, the Ghost Reaper. Ghost Reaper. That card was, like, you guys saw it in the duel, but it really wasn't relevant because the guy wasn't going to be making some of the cards. You have to have the cards in your side deck in your extra deck with Ghost Reaper to really deal with what your opponent is playing. And if you don't have, like, if they're playing totally awesome, then you can completely shut down their deck. If they're playing a Paleozoic deck, that can really hurt them quite a bit. It can slow their deck down, and if they're going to reset some other cards, potentially they can get back the cards later. But for the most part, like certain cards, you can just shut them down. But again, the whole idea is that once one thing is broken in anti-meta, the deck falls apart relatively fast. And this is not to discourage you guys from at least trying anti-meta, because you guys know I support every playstyle in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whether it's stall or whatever. You know, a deck's a deck. There's players that like to play these stall decks. There's players that like to play burn FTK decks. There's players that enjoy a lot of different things in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's one thing that I think is kind of cool. There's a lot more play styles in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than I think in other card games. And I've tried I've tried a lot of other card games. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely has a lot of variety in it. As far as like win conditions, Exodia, we got the Destiny board. All of that. I know Destiny board ain't too meta. But again, this whole video was to not only answer the guy that asked me, you know, why doesn't my anti-meta deck beat meta? Because, you know, I thought like anti-meta would beat this. It's not like Overwatch where like, you know, this hero counters this hero. It all depends on, first off, the decks, the players' ability to like know what the cards do and which card to summon at which time, and when to like summon Fossil Dyna and like 3 other barrier cards when, you know, one Dark Hole would completely destroy you. I mean, sometimes you might want to summon multiple of them so you can kind of attack a little bit faster. Maybe you want to beat your opponent faster so they can't top deck that Raigeki. So there's a lot of bit of play to it, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below because, yeah, there we go. I thought this video was really good for some of the newer players coming into the game. Yeah, fire does not beat grass, and grass does not beat like water. There's really none of that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, anti-meta can beat meta, But again, it really relies off having all these cards, and once one thing gets broken, it's very difficult to really come back with it. And again, that replay was an excellent example of that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing this kind of more, I guess, discussion-ish type videos. If you guys like these, let me know for sure down below in the comment section below. And I'll try to do a little bit more of these discussion videos in the future. But anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed seeing that. If you did, make sure you guys get a like button, a slapper right now, and hit that subscribe button for more Yu-Gi-Oh discussions.